Hello everybody. So in this video we're going to compare the image quality of the Nikon Z8 versus the Nikon D850. So both of these cameras are 45 megapixel full frame cameras. The Nikon Z8 has a stack sensor, does not have a mechanical shutter, and is a mirrorless camera. And the Nikon D850, it does not have a stack sensor, but it does have a mechanical shutter. And it's a DSLR, so it does have that mirror. And the D850 was released back in 2017, and the Z8 was released in 2023. And both of these cameras have a base ISO of 64. Now, I don't really expect there to be too much of a difference between these two cameras in terms of the image quality output for still photography. But I wanted to run some tests anyways and just kind of see for myself. And I figured some of you guys would be interested in this as well. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So here we are inside of Lightroom, and I have a bunch of different test shots that I captured with both of the cameras. Now these are all raw files, and I have not done any post-processing to these images aside from just applying the lens correction profile to them. But aside from that, everything's just at the default Adobe settings. And I used the same lens for all of these images as well. So that lens was the Nikon F-mount 70 to 200 millimeter f2.8 lens. And to be able to use that lens on the Nikon Z8, I used the F to Z version 2 adapter. But anyways, let's go ahead and jump right into it here. Take a look at our first comparison. And just gonna kind of punch in here to 100% so we can see what's going on. We've got the Z8 on the left, D850 on the right. And I'm really not seeing any real difference here at all in terms of the image quality. The detail looks fantastic on both of these files. I would say the only thing that I am noticing here is there is a slight white balance difference. Now, when I was shooting these images, I used manual Kelvin setting, so both of the cameras are set at the same exact Kelvin value. But what I'm seeing here is it looks like the Z8 renders a little bit cooler, and the D850 renders a little bit warmer. When you're comparing these two cameras to each other, and that's not a huge deal really. You can obviously adjust that real quick in editing, but I do see that difference here. But really, aside from that, everything looks pretty much identical here. No difference at all. Let's go ahead, we'll move into the next shot. Compare these. Now for these shots here, it looks like the shutter speed is not exactly the same on these files. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to adjust the D850 file here. Looks like it was overexposed by like a quarter of a stop, so I'm just going to bring it down a quarter of a stop there so we get an even exposure between the two files. Alright, let's go ahead, we'll take a look now. Just kind of look at this area here, and really it's the same thing. Both of these cameras are producing really nice images. That lens is super sharp. I'm really happy with the results here. Definitely no complaints. You got just a ton of detail there. So for these next series of tests here, I want to take a look at the ISO performance between the two cameras. So we're just going to kind of move up the ISO range. And I got these landscape shots that we'll use for that, as well as these test chart images. But before we dig into that, I do want to make a white balance adjustment to these test chart shots. Just because they were a little bit warm, so I'm gonna kind of cool that down a little bit. Maybe something like this. And just gonna copy that setting there. I'm gonna paste that into all of the test chart shots that I have here. All right, there we go. So let's go ahead, we'll jump into the base ISO of 64 here. And just going to zoom into 100% again and take a look. Now what I am kind of seeing here is it looks like the cameras do kind of expose slightly differently from one another. Now I'm using the same exact settings here, you know, 1/100th of a second, f5.6, ISO 64, you know, like I mentioned earlier, it's the same lens, we're at the same focal length here. So everything is, you know, pretty much identical, but it looks like the D850 looks slightly brighter to me. Oh, you know, the Z8 looks a little darker to me, but you know, we'll just do the best we can to compare these. And you know, as you would expect at the base ISO, there's really no difference. And if we take a look here at the test chart image, you know, there's really no noticeable difference here as well. So now here we are at ISO 100. And you know, really not seeing much of a difference here either. Obviously this is still a very, very low ISO. And here with the test chart images, definitely the same thing. You know, no huge difference there. Let's go ahead, we'll keep moving up. Here at ISO 200, things are still very, very clean. You know, nothing to complain about at all. And it's the same story with these test chart shots. Things look really nice. Now here at ISO 400, still not a huge difference between the two files. Both of the cameras hold up really nicely at ISO 400 here. Maybe just a little bit of noise coming through, but it's very, very negligible. And these test chart shots kind of tell the same story here. Can maybe see slightly more noise in the D850 file and some of these darker colors here, but it is a very minor difference. Let's keep moving up. Here we are now at ISO 800. And just kind of looking in some of these shadowy areas, and the noise level to me appears to be pretty much identical. Can maybe see a slight bit more on the D850, but not really much at all. Nothing meaningful there. Now with these test chart shots here, take a look. Some of these colors, again, I can maybe see slightly more on the D850 in certain areas. Let's take a look down here. But really, you know, there's no true like meaningful difference here in my opinion. Both these cameras still look really nice at ISO 800. So here at ISO 1600 now, we'll zoom in and take a look. Getting a little bit more noise in there on both of these files. But in terms of, you know, if one is better than the other, I can't really say one is. In terms of the noise, it looks pretty close to me. Maybe just a hair bit more noise on the D850. And for these test chart shots here, you know, really no meaningful difference here in most of these areas. I do feel like, you know, the D850 in some of these, I mentioned this earlier, but you know, some of these darker areas, I can definitely see just a slight bit more, but it's really not a big deal at all. So here we are at ISO 3200 now. And, you know, both of these images are, you know, you're starting to see a little bit more of that graininess look to the images here now because of the noise. You know, but both of these are pretty close. I think there might be a slight bit more on the D850, but it's not by a ton. Now for these test chart shots here, I do see a slight bit more on the D850 again on some of these colors, especially the darker color here. You know, the red looks slightly bit, it looks a little bit noisier to me. Now we'll go ahead and take a look at ISO 6400 here. And both of these are getting a little bit noisier as we move up. You can definitely, you know, see a fair amount of noise in here and in here. You know, really all over the image. We'll bring these in a little closer. Definitely seeing a little more on the D850 versus the Z8 there, but they're still very close in my opinion. And if we look at the test chart, you kind of get the same story there, where I'm seeing maybe just a slight bit more noise on the D850, but it's not by a large margin whatsoever. I think these cameras so far to me look very, very comparable in terms of that ISO performance. So now here we are at ISO 12,800. And as I look around here, to me it kind of looks like the D850 is kind of falling apart a little bit faster than the Z8 is. Now both of these files though are extremely noisy at this higher ISO. You guys just see noise everywhere on both of them, but to me it looks like the Z8 is a little cleaner. But this is kind of, you know, an ISO level that I really would hardly ever shoot in, if at all. And when we look at the test chart shots, kind of seeing the same thing, where there's a little bit more noise over here on the D850. I mean, this is not really like a night and day difference though, but there is a small difference. So here we are now at ISO 25,600. And take a look around. Now both of these files look like pretty much like garbage, super, super noisy. Things are falling apart in both images. But it does seem like the Z8 is handling the noise slightly better. And when we look at the test chart shots here, we can confirm that. You know, we definitely see a bit more noise on the D850, but both images look very, very noisy. So for this next series of tests here, I have some intentionally underexposed shots. And what I'm going to do is just boost that exposure back up, and then we'll do some side-by-side comparisons. So we're just going to jump in here, and we'll bring this one up to +3 stops there. Now it's still a little, it's probably a little bit overexposed still, but that's all right. We're just going to roll with that. And let me go ahead and do the same thing here. And we'll take a look. See what we get. And both files seem to handle that type of adjustment very well. You know, 3-stop boost there. Things look good. Can't really say one looks better than the other. They both essentially look the same to me. Just kind of looking for, you know, noise differences and stuff as well, and I really don't see much. So let's go ahead. We'll look at the test chart shot. So we're gonna grab this one. Just gonna do the same thing. And there's really no noticeable difference at all. Everything still looks really nice and clean with that 3-stop exposure boost. Really no noticeable difference there. Alright, so for these next images here, it's pretty much the same thing, except I underexposed these by 5 stops. So let's just come in here and boost that up by 5 stops. Just going to copy that, and we'll paste it into there so we can compare. And we'll zoom in. Take a look around here. I'm seeing maybe slightly more noise in the D850. You know, just it's kind of the same as like when we were going up the ISO range. There's a slight difference, but it's negligible. It's not a very meaningful difference at all. So really, for all intents and purposes, these cameras handle that, you know, 5-stop exposure boost pretty much the same here. Let's take a look. These areas side by side. I mean, there's not a huge difference. Again, maybe a little bit more noise there, but nothing major. All right, let's do the same thing with the test chart shot here. And I do see more noise on the D850 here. I can actually see a little bit of banding here. I can see a little bit of banding in here too, but it's more noticeable over here on the D850 to my eye. Same thing down here. All right, so now for these next shots, these are intentionally overexposed. So I have some shots that are overexposed by 2 stops and then overexposed by 3 stops. So let's go ahead and take a look here. Go into the develop module, and we'll do a -2. And let's copy that, paste it in there. So when we look here at a global level, you know, to me it looks like both cameras are handling that type of adjustment equally as well here. Not seeing much difference at all there. All right, let's go ahead and look at these test chart shots here. So come in here and we'll just do a -2. Copy that, paste it. And both files here on a global level look pretty good after that type of adjustment. Not really seeing any issues or degradations there. So for this next series of tests, it's pretty much the same thing, except this time we are overexposed by 3 stops. So let's just come in here. You can see how blown out everything is there. And come in here, we'll do a -3 this time. And now you can see that the Z8 can definitely not really handle that kind of adjustment. You know, all that blue in the sky is gone. Things are blown out in different areas of the image here, and it just doesn't look good. Let's go ahead and let's copy that and we'll see how the D850 performs. And looks like pretty much the same thing. Things look bad in both of these images when you try to recover 3 stops like that. You got stuff blown out here in the rocks. Obviously the sky is the main culprit there, but things just don't look good at all when you try to recover that much information. But you know, with 2 stops, we just kind of go back here real quick. You can see, you know, we're still able to recover quite a bit of that information there. But once we go up to 3, it's not looking so great. But let's go ahead. We'll take a look at the test chart shot, and let's bring that down by 3, and copy this. And paste that in, and let's compare here. So with these shots here, you can definitely see that things have been recovered pretty nicely here. And if we take a closer look, definitely not seeing really any difference at all between the 2 images in terms of the ability to recover that information. So in a controlled environment, you know, like this, where I was able to evenly light everything, you know, things are recovered pretty nicely. All right, so let's go ahead and summarize the results now. So in this video, we looked at the overall image quality. We also went up the ISO range of the cameras. We did some underexposure tests, and we also did some overexposure tests as well. So based on everything that we looked at, I would pretty much say that there isn't really too much of a difference at all between the 2 cameras in terms of still photography image quality. Now, at higher ISOs, there did appear to be like a slight bit more noise in the D850 files, but to me, you know, that difference was pretty much meaningless. I mean, the difference would probably completely go away with just like a tiny amount of noise reduction applied in post. And I also did notice a minor white balance difference in the files as well, with the Z8 rendering a bit cool compared to the D850, and you know, the D850 rendering a bit warm compared to the Z8. But I also think that this difference is pretty much meaningless as well, since you can easily adjust the white balance in post. Now, keep in mind that in this video, I was pretty much only looking at the stills quality. You know, I wasn't looking at other characteristics of the cameras, you know, such as the autofocus capabilities, video performance, and you know, all the other features. You know, those things will be a topic for another day. But overall, you know, from a stills photo standpoint, both of these cameras performed, you know, really great in my opinion, and both of them provide outstanding image quality. Now, if you happen to be in the market for, you know, any photography gear, I would definitely appreciate you clicking through my affiliate links that are in the description of this video before making your purchase. That really helps me a lot in continuing to grow this channel and provide quality content to you. So thank you so much for doing that. But anyways, that is it for now. I will see you on the next video.